Okay, we're gonna be doing 5.4 in this video. So, first question, what is a monopoly? So pretty much a monopoly is a market where there's only one buyer of a good or resource. So in labor markets, this means there's only one employer hiring workers, while many workers want jobs. So basically, the firm has power to set wages because workers don't have many other options. So there's pretty much five main characteristics, I would say. First one being single dominant buyer. So it means that one company or one employer controls the entire market. And the second one is many sellers, which basically means that lots of people, lots of workers are looking for jobs. The third one I briefly mentioned is the wage setting power that firm has, because pretty much they're the employer, they're the only one, because they're the only buyer. The employer can influence wages because they're like the only option they have. And next one, hiring more workers cost more. Because the firm has to raise wages for all extra employers to attract extra workers. And finally, the last one is that lower wages and employment than competitive markets. This is because pretty much fewer workers are hired at lower wages because of these four first factors. And some real life examples is, for example, mining towns where the entire industry is just based off one company having a mining. For example, a company town where, for example, like a single factory employs most of the town. Rural hospital could be the only employer for nurses. Or a meatpacking plant in a small town where it's pretty much the main sources of jobs. And those are some real life examples of monopoly. Okay, so now we're gonna just draw the graph, I guess, and that's gonna be like this. The vertical graph is gonna be the wage, and the horizontal axis is just gonna be like the quantity of labor. So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna draw the supply first, which is gonna slope upwards at S, and then I'm gonna draw the the upward sloping line is just the labor supply curve. It shows the wage that workers are willing to accept for like each number of workers hired. So in a monopoly, it also represents the average cost of labor. And we're gonna draw the marginal resource cost, the MRC. It's just gonna be steeper than the supply curve, and it's gonna be above. There we go. And it's gonna be above the supply curve. So we're just gonna do that. And we're gonna label it the MRC. Hiring one more worker means the firm must raise the wage for all workers in a monopoly. So this means that extra cost makes the marginal resource pretty much just cost higher than the wage. And now we're gonna draw the labor demand, which is gonna be like this, also known as MRP. This marginal revenue product, this is the labor demand curve showing like the value each additional worker brings to the firm. And then, okay, there we go. And then we have to find the optimal number of workers, and that's where that's gonna be is where the MRC, which is here, intersects the labor demand, which is here. So we're just gonna do this. This is gonna be QM. This is where the monopolist hires, where MRC equals demand. This maximizes profit because hiring more people would cost like more than like the value like the each worker adds. And we're gonna find the wage that the monopoly pays, which is gonna be from QM. You just go up to the supply curve and go to the wage axis, which is gonna be like here. So we're gonna label this W M, and this is the wage that's determined by the supply curve at the quantity of workers hired. It's lower than the competitive wage because the firm pays like less because the monopoly like has power. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna identify the competitive point, which is gonna be an intersection of S labor supply and labor demand MRP, which is right around here. So this is where supply and demand meet. So if the government sets a minimum wage at this level, the monopoly should be hiring the competitive quantity of workers. And we're gonna draw a horizontal line at here, which is going to be the competitive wage. We would label it WC. And the government imposes a minimum wage at this level. This is higher than the monopoly's original wage of WM. And we're just gonna have to adjust the MRC to that, which is gonna be just flat at the minimum wage until it intersects the original supply curve. So pretty much it just means that with a binding minimum wage, the firm can hire. Okay, I'm just gonna write new MRC. This is gonna be with a binding minimum wage, the firm can hire more workers at the same wage, so the marginal research cost becomes horizontal at WC until it just like meets the supply curve. And this means like the extra cost of hiring one more worker is just a minimum wage and not higher. And to find a new hiring quantity, this is going to be where the new MRC intersects the labor demand MRP curve, which is going to be right around here. So let's label it QC. Now the firm hires workers where the new MRC intersects demand. This is like the competitive quantity QC, which is more workers than the original monopoly quantity QM. So these 2 points are like the new wages and the amount of people they hire after the changes, and the conclusion of this is that both employment and wages increase compared to the original monopoly situation.